Welcome everybody to the June edition of BioStock Live from Stockholm. My name is Jonas Söderström. I'm the CEO and editor of BioStock, and I'm here today to present three exciting Swedish and Danish life science companies to you. We will be focusing a lot on oncology today. Two of the companies who are here today will be presenting their exciting programs within the oncology field. However, we are going to start out with something completely different. We have our first guest is Jörgen Dreyer, who's the CEO of Danish Saniona, a company that has both projects in the CNS area and also within metabolic diseases. So we're going to hear a lot about that today. So without further ado, I give you Jörgen Dreyer from Saniona. Welcome, Jörgen.
Thank you. And it's nice to see so many familiar faces here. Saniona is a Danish biotech company, Jonas just mentioned, in CNS metabolic diseases. We founded the company back in 2012. I did it together with Thomas Feldhus and a few others. And we are now listed here in Stockholm at the Nasdaq Small Cap. So we feel we are a leading company within our field of research, which is ion channels, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. But that also goes into the CNS. And we've been able to make a number of partnerships over the first years of existence with some of the biggest players in the field. That is Pfizer, it's Johnson & Johnson, and more recently Boehringer Ingelheim. And that is based on this advanced technology platform and programs. So the programs are, the pipeline is actually quite wide, and also it's quite advanced. We have actually one compound which is getting very close to the market now, and that's a compound in obesity, and it's potentially coming to the market in Mexico next year. It's in registration phase right now. It has shown very, very good weight loss. And another version of that drug called Tesomet, we are developing internally for eating disorders, rare eating disorders, and have a very interesting market potential there to go on our own into this billion-dollar opportunity. And we've already seen efficacy of the drug in one of the two indications we are going for. And then we have made a number of, actually 3 spin-outs, and one of them we'll actually present later today. We also have a spin-out which is in phase 2, and the others are going into phase 2. And we have made a number of partnerships, as I said. One with Boehringer Ingelheim, we already received around 100 million Swedish kronor in upfront payments, in milestone payments, and we are hoping for another milestone payment early next year. So there are several compounds from our early stage ion channel platform that are now moving into the clinic, and I'll show you a couple of those. So we when we show our pipeline, we show it in 2 different versions. One is the internal pipeline where we are investing ourselves, and it is in particular this Tesomet product in these 2 indications, which we call Prader-Willi syndrome and hypothalamic obesity. I'll talk more about that. And here we are in phase 2, and as mentioned, we have shown efficacy in one of the indications and just started the phase 2 studies in the other indications. 2 other earlier stage programs now moving into the clinic or towards the clinic, completely new concept for treating pain, and also a program in inflammation, in general inflammation, particularly in Crohn's disease and colitis, where we are very close to selecting the candidate. I mentioned the list of partner programs, the Mexican deal where our partner Medix showed very good efficacy in obesity in their registration phase 3 studies, and now moving towards the launch of that potentially early next year. The Cadent, one of our spin-out companies, we still have an ownership in the company, and we have royalties on the product that are now developed in 2 different indications, and one of them in phase 2, the other one potentially very soon going into phase 2. We have the Boehringer deal in schizophrenia. It's an early program, but also here we expect a milestone soon when they enter into phase 1 studies. And then finally, a cocaine addiction program run with academic investigators in the US in phase 2. So a very long pipeline. I'll talk about a few of these programs. And of course, tesofensine, closest to the market, is important. The market in Mexico is quite interesting. It's around $250 million right now. And our partner there, Medix, have about half of that market. And with this new product, they believe they can really boost their market. And we'll, of course, have an interesting double-digit royalty of that. And they have paid for everything, and we also have the data that they have generated. And we intend to consider that, to use that in several other countries in Latin America, where the same package can be used for registration. And one of them is Argentina, where Medix also has the right. Another one could, of course, be Brazil. The most important program we consider to be Tesomet. It is a little behind tesofensine, of course, but still we see the market opportunity for us to be very, very big there. With the Prader-Willi syndrome, estimated market size of $3 billion in hypothalamic obesity, maybe a little less, but still a $1 billion opportunity. So the status of that is that we are now just this month completing the open label extension of a phase 2 study where we've shown very nice efficacy. We have done the dose finding, and now we are really at the turning point, getting ready for the pivotal phase 2b, phase 3 studies, which will be run more or less in one flow, and expect to file in 2021-22. In hypothalamic obesity, we started the study, and it should be ready about the same time. The Prader-Willi syndrome, I think most of you have heard about this before, but it's a disease where the patients have no appetite control whatsoever because they have damage in their appetite center. And they have also other problems, but this is their main problem. They think of nothing but eating, and this is a terrible condition for them. And also, of course, they get very, very big. And we think we can treat that with our Tesomet product because it actually controls appetite, it controls craving for food. The market opportunity, as I said, could be very substantial, although there are not that many patients in this genetic disease. We can demand a very high price because it's a life-threatening disease, and also there is no approved drug yet for treating this disease. It's clear endpoints, and also we think it's small studies that we would actually be able to finance ourselves and keep the market for ourselves. As I said, we have done phase 2 studies for the last 1.5 years or so, and we have done the proof of concept. We know that it works. It's actually very effective. And we also have done a dose-finding study in teenagers, and with a quarter of the dose we used here, and now moving up in dose. So we are at the turning point where we can conclude from the studies, and it is that it's very effective in both reducing the craving for food and also on the weight. And we think we have sufficient data to support a phase 2b, phase 3 program, and we'll discuss that with the regulators this autumn is the plan. So we think we will start with a dose of 0.25 milligram in these. And this is how the design of the study looks for now. We intend to do 3 doses in this phase 2b study. First, a fixed dose and then a flexible dose in parallel with a placebo. And then after half a year, we read out the double-blind part of the study, and that would lead to the second part, the phase 3 pivotal study number 2, which is a placebo, and one of these 2 we continue for another 6 months. And then in parallel, or after this, we'll do extension of this study, extension of this study, and all this will be the registration package. I think most of you may have seen the data before, really very interesting data, giving a very nice weight loss of around 7% in just 3 months, and also seeing a dramatic effect on this main problem that these patients have, they simply stop craving for food. This hyperphagia score goes essentially down to 0 within 3 months, which is really, really remarkable. And nobody else in the field has seen anything close to this. The second part of the study was in teenagers, and we used a quarter of the dose, as I mentioned. So the other indication, the hypothalamic obesity, that is actually quite similar to Prader-Willi syndrome. Here there also is a almost complete lack of appetite control, but now it's not a genetic disease. It's a disease that's caused by a damage to the brain, to this region of the brain where the appetite center is. And it can be either a trauma, or it actually, in most cases, it's a benign cancer that grows into the area and actually destroys that field. And that has significant consequences, in particular in relation to the appetite control. So also these patients from one day to the other go from being lean to being very big, because they simply think about eating all of the time. This can also be life-threatening and certainly has severe quality of life consequences. Here is a similar diagram showing the distribution of patients in Europe and US and Japan. Also a small population, but the story is essentially the same, that we can demand a high price. There's no treatment whatsoever today, and also we think we can do this simply in studies like this, where we have a phase 2 study ongoing in Denmark, in one of the most recognized centers in this field, and they are looking for, of course, changes in body weight, appetite, and quality of life in this 6-month study in up to 25 patients. So the general early stage pipeline, I don't have much time to talk about this. It is, and I also talked a little bit about it before, but I'll specifically mention some of the very unique programs that we've been able to make out of our internal platform, where we are really leading in the world. So the Cadent program, which we put into a spin-out, it's a program that controls the fine motor movements in patients that have a genetic disease and they actually die from the disease, ataxia. And there's no treatment today. Cadent is moving towards the phase 2 in that indication, and also are already in phase 2 in essential tremor. So very advanced in these few years we've been on the road. The SAN711 is also a unique new principle, potentially revolutionizing principle in treatment of pain and in treatment of itching. Itching you can get if you have kidney disease and you have simply chronic itching, nothing to do about it. It's really a terrible condition. This new principle has shown very remarkable effect in itching and also in the chronic pain. The Boehringer Ingelheim I cannot talk much about, but of course they are thrilled with the program in schizophrenia and hopefully go into phase 1 early next year. IK program, also completely new principle for treatment of inflammation, and other programs. So this is also to illustrate that we have a number of partnership opportunities. We've made a few already, and also these are all ready for partnering. We'll probably keep one of them for ourselves, but the others we could partner. So financials I'll not talk much about, but again, stress that we have been able to really secure quite a significant income from our partnerships. We've made more money from partnering than we have raised in the share market. And also last year we came out very nice results because of a milestone from Boehringer. So near-term inflection points, well, the Tesomet product in Prader-Willi syndrome will read out very soon, the phase 2A study, and we'll initiate the phase 2B3 pivotal studies, very important. And also in about half a year or a little more, we'll get data from the hypothalamic obesity study. The product that's going to the market in Mexico, hopefully, we will expect the filing very, very soon. There will be meetings with the authorities, COFEPRIS in Medics Now, and also the approval hopefully this year and launch next year and the year after in Argentina. I mentioned some of the milestones in the early program. So Saniona is now out in a financing round. We have just announced a rights issue, which is underwritten up to 85%. And so our current shareholders will receive 1 subscription right for each share, and they will get 2 new shares for 11 subscription rights. It's a fair price of 18 kroner per share. The subscription period is running right now from the 10th to the 25th of June. So just to conclude, we feel we are a leading company within our field of discovery in the ion channel field, in the CNS field, and we have 5 programs in clinical development. We have a world-class ion channel team, and based on this, we've been able to make a number of partnerships over the years. We have been able to show efficacy in phase 3 with a tesofensine product and bring it to the market. Another product, Tesomet, we'll bring on our own to the market in Prader-Willi syndrome. And all of these $1 billion potential. So the news flow we see to be quite intensive over the next months. So we hope that if you are already shareholder, you consider to use your rights in this offering, and if you're not shareholder, I think it's also a good opportunity to get into the company. Thank you.
Thank you, Jørgen. Thank you very much. Well, it's obvious that you have an interesting pipeline going forward. I'm kind of interested in the near-term possible going to the market with a product through your Mexican partner, then Medix.
Yeah.
You mentioned that the overall market for obesity in Mexico is $250 million.
Yes.
And that Medix has around half of that.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of market share could you expect for Tesomet?
Yeah, you can do your own calculation. Of course, I'm not allowed to talk about it. I think the analysts estimate that it'll be a royalty around 15%, and so you can do your calculations. It's a very, very significant amount of money that we could get from that royalty in Mexico alone, and that would of course contribute significantly to the financing of our clinical development programs already potentially from next year.
Well, seeing then that you have that potential cash inflow in the near future, you have now decided to change the financing strategy a little bit. Can you tell us why now doing the share issue?
Yes, I think, as I mentioned, we are at a very important turning point now. We have completed the phase 2A studies in these very important indications, and now we are taking the next very big step for the final pivotal studies. And this takes quite a bit of money to prepare for that. It's not only to write documents, it's also to make new tablets and a lot of things. So we need quite substantial money to initiate that process. And definitely the financing solution that we've used the last 1.5 years, it will not provide for that. It was made as a short-term thing, and now we are in the more normal biotech world where we make offerings to the public to finance our activities.
And that the previous solution, then you had an agreement with Nice and Green regarding convertible loans. How has that worked out for you, you think?
I think it has worked really well for us. The share price when we entered into the agreement was 27. It was also 27 before we went out in this offering. So we could have, of course, had a worry that it would pressure our price, and maybe it has to an extent. It could have gone up on the way, but actually it has been very mild to our shares, and it has really provided us with the capital we needed in a very flexible, in a very cheap way. So I think this was the right thing for us to do at that time to bring us from where we were to a new turning point.
But looking at the You mentioned that the share price and the pressure that could have been a reason for it being on the same level. During the same period, you had a quite significant news flow as well, quite a lot of interesting milestones coming up. So no regrets regarding that?
Of course, it's always nice to see your share price go up to the heaven, but there's also a risk in that it can drop easily from that. I see this as a long-term development of the company. We are building value in the company every day, and we have reached all our milestones. We are building the company, and therefore the share price will follow. Maybe not now, but it will definitely at some point reflect what we have in the company.
And looking at Saniona's pipeline, you have a broad pipeline with 5 clinical stage programs. You have several partnerships in place. You have the medics collaboration that could generate royalties within the near future and so on. And you're doing a share issue. How come you're not attracting institutional investors at this point?
Well, I think we are talking with many of the very big international funds, but generally these professional biotech funds are not investing in a company our size. We are simply too small at this point in time. So, but I'm sure they will come in. Of course, we would have preferred they came in now, but we have time to wait for them. That's the general picture.
Yeah. Well, looking forward to seeing Saniona growing into that size of a company that will attract them. And finishing off, what are you yourself most excited about in your near-time future regarding possible milestones?
Well, I see the most important value driver for us to be the Tesomet, where we're now getting into the last part of the development, which is really, really exciting. We could really change the life for these patients and also have a very good market opportunity. But actually, for me personally, it's also extremely interesting to get potentially Tesofensine on the market next year. This will be my first drug on the market, and I really worked my whole life to get there. Very few people will actually in our industry will actually be able to see a product to the market. And this was developed in my lab, and I love the program.
I can understand that. Well, we wish you all the luck with that, and thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you, Jonas.
Well, it seems like the weather gods aren't on our side today. So our upcoming 2 guests who would be arriving from Denmark, they are a slightly bit delayed due to the harsh weather conditions. So we're actually going to take a 15-minute break now. You can go out, stretch your legs, and have some coffee. And viewers at home, you can go use your coffee machine and come back to us in a few minutes, and we'll continue then. Thank you. So welcome back everybody from that short break. We had to have a break due to the weather conditions. Some of our participants were a bit delayed. But now everyone is in the house and we are ready to continue. Our next speaker is Nyhetsbyrån, who is the CEO of Scandion Oncology. Welcome, Nils.
Thank you. And thank you to all of you for coming to listen to Scandion Oncology today. And as you can already see up here, we are dealing with something very, very special and very specific. And very few people know that, like we know from antibiotic resistance when you treat infections, that bacteria can become resistant. The same happens with cancer cells. So within months, cancer cells can develop resistance against treatment. And then the oncologist have no more to offer the patient, and the patient is sent back to his or her home to die. I'm a medical oncologist, so I've been in that situation many, many times. And that resulted in a Danish research center we got from what is called Grundforskningsfonden some years ago at the university, where we developed a lot of knowledge within resistance against anti-cancer drugs. I'll give you a brief review on where we are and what we are doing. So this might be also a surprise. I think I walk over here so you can see the slides. A surprise to you. You can see that every day in Sweden, I have to be here, sorry. Every day in Sweden, 64 patients are dying from cancer. So it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and so forth. Every day, year-round, 64 patients are dying from cancer, and mainly due to that the cancer cells develop this resistance, and often cross resistance, so even changing to another drug doesn't help. Scandion Oncology is developing drugs, and it's a long story how we got started and so on. But at present, we have 3 drugs in our pipeline, and I'll start talking on what is called SCO-101, the most advanced drug in our portfolio. And this drug we actually got from Saniona. You just heard Saniona. And Saniona inherited the drug from a company named Neurosearch, where Saniona was built from. And we screened a lot of drugs, and one of these drugs, SCO-101, turned out to inhibit drug resistance in cancer cells. And what was very nice was that this drug had already passed 4 phase 1 studies, shown to be a safe drug with very limited toxicity. And I judged that this company had spent about 100 million Swedish krona on all this development. Unfortunately, there's only one side effect, and that is that in the phase 1 study, they could show that those who received the drug had a slight increase in what is called serum unconjugated bilirubin. This is a product from hemoglobin that binds oxygen in normal cells. And this company, they were developing the drug to treat a disease that is characterized by degradation of hemoglobin. It has nothing to do with cancer. So they left it on the shelf, but in our case, it doesn't matter that they have this slight increase. No worry at all. So we tested this drug in our lab and found out that it inhibits very specific resistant mechanisms, some of which were known already and some are new in the field. And I'll just show you one of these. This is a cancer cell, and the yellow here is the membrane around the cell, and you can see here we give the cancer cell chemotherapy. It gets into the cell and it kills the cell. This is what we always hope when we give chemotherapy. But unfortunately, resistant cancer cells can upregulate thousandfolds, small pumps sitting in the membrane that are pumping out the drugs as soon as it gets in. So there will never be enough chemotherapy in the cell to kill the cell. But our drug, SCO-101, blocks this pump. That means the chemotherapy stays in the cell and kills the cells. Very simple, but that was a known mechanism, but there are no drugs that can do the same in the clinic. This is my vision slide, and I want to share it with you because now when we are starting our phase 2, I'll come back to that, this will be in patients with resistant disease. They have been given up on them from the oncologist, and then they will enter our study. But my vision, of course, is to be able to treat patients already when we diagnose them. And if you see this patient, his cancer consists of a lot of blue cells that are drug sensitive, and then small areas of red cells that are drug resistant. Then we treat the patient and we kill all the blue drug sensitive cells, but unfortunately this is what very often happens. The red cells stays there and they start growing, and eventually we have to tell the patient that the cancer has returned and we have no more drugs. If we could have added SCO-101 already from the beginning, we might also have been able to kill the 3 red dots here, and then we would have cured the cells. This is my vision for our drugs. As I said, SCO-101 had passed phase 1 studies, so we are now ready to go for phase 2 studies, and I'll just show you how a phase 2 study with a drug against drug resistance, what it looks like. And since the drug has never been given together with chemotherapy, there's something called a run-in phase. So you take 3 patients at 50% of SCO-101 and 100% of chemotherapy. Then you move to the next 3 patients, 75% SCO-101, 100% chemotherapy, and then at the end, 6 patients with 100% of each of them. And then you're ready to move over and use 100% in a regular phase 2 study, where we look for whether giving SCO-101 together with chemotherapy, but the chemotherapy that the patient developed resistance against. So they're coming directly from a visit with the oncologist saying it doesn't work any longer, it starts growing even though we gave you chemotherapy, but they will continue, but now they will get our drug in addition to it. And then when we block the resistant mechanisms, the hope is that we can prolong the survival of these patients. And I think this is very important here. We start the study end of this year. We are waiting for the drug to be finally produced at Cambrex in Karlskoga here in Sweden. And when that is done, and that is about December 1st, we can start our study with the first patient in December 19. We'll have the first readout of data in Q2 in 2020, and the study should be finalized already within a year. What will we learn from such a study? We'll know something about how much we can give of SCO-101 together with chemotherapy. We know how it distributes in the body. We'll be able to look at the anti-cancer effects from the first part, and then we'll look for something called predictive biomarkers. And this is a way to select patients, those with the highest chance of having a positive effect by getting SCO-101 on top of their chemotherapy. And so we will have the first effect measures from the first part of the study, the 12 patients, in Q2 2020. And the second part, which is focused on efficacy, end of 2020, we'll know whether it's effective or not to give it in combination with chemotherapy. And of course, we have a lot of data from the lab in cell culture and in animals showing that it works. So now we need to test it in humans. What is the market potential of a drug like SCO-101? And we had a company in Copenhagen called Cortfish to do calculations. And what they did was that they said, we'll start looking just at breast and colorectal cancer here, and metastatic colorectal cancer and breast cancer, and those patients who receive those drugs that SCO-101 works together with. And then we looked at the number of such patients in EU and United States, and we did place a price of 4,000 euros on one cycle of treatment, this combination treatment. And that ends up with a peak annual sale of 3.6 billion euros. It's a huge market. The first numbers I showed you with all these Swedish cancer patients dying every day, the market is fantastic, big. Unfortunately, I would have hoped that there was no market, but unfortunately, we see just an increase, and the WHO expect that we have a further 50% increase in cancer incidence over the next 15 years. So there's really a challenge here. Then we have, I won't go into details with our other drugs in our pipeline. We have SCO-201 and SCO-301 that we are taking forward. But I'll just say a little bit about a drug SOM-001, and this is about antibiotic resistance. So by chance, we found that one of our drugs also works in antibiotic resistance. And that came from an idea that perhaps resistant mechanisms in cancer could be kind of similar in bacteria. So we tested some of our drugs in antibiotic resistance, and yes, it turned out that one of the drugs were very active. So over here you see bacteria that are resistant to the antibiotics they're exposed to here. So they just go up and form these yellow colonies. Here we take bacteria that are resistant and treat them with SOM-001, and you can see they totally kill the bacteria. And we are refining this, going back, doing more studies, and it looks extremely promising. So we are here. We have done the early discovery here. We have done lead identification, and now we are optimizing the drug, and then we will go into preclinical testing in animals here in the fall. And is there a market for drugs that can combat antibiotic resistance? Yes, there is. This is just some examples, and you can see that some of these drugs, before their patents are ending, that they can easily reach blockbuster potential. So this is a big market for that also. We have decided in Scandion Oncology that we are a cancer research company. We're not going to start working with microbiology. So we are still discussing and planning how we, in the best way, can form a business plan and develop this, but outside Scandion Oncology. Then we have presented an extended business strategy, a new strategy. We announced in our memorandum when we had our IPO in November last year that we would raise 13 million Swedish kronor here in 2019 to finalize the first phase 2 study. And this is what we have up here. And this was in colorectal cancer. But our extended business strategy is to run one additional clinical study. Are we? Yeah. Oh, yeah. But then you can't see, so we have to kind of to run one more study. And we know now that our partners for the future, they want to see more than one study. So they believe that if we can show even in 2 different studies, in 2 different indications, colorectal cancer and breast cancer, that it works, we create a lot of more value to the company. And then we have a third study we want to perform, but this should be with soft money. So we are applying for soft money. It's fulvestrant. It's an anti-estrogen, very effective in breast cancer. But all patients, 100% of these women develop resistance. And so we need to have something where we can combat the resistance. And we have a drug, and that's actually SCO-101, that also, in a totally different mechanism of action, blocks resistance to anti-estrogens. Then we have our 2 other candidates here where we want to further advance the preclinical development of them. We want to do some more studies in antibiotic resistance here. And then we want to finalize our business development plans and start meeting with potential partners and so on. So this is why we decided not to raise 13 million, but now raising 28 million, and then later on additional 12 million. Just again to repeat, we are starting our first clinical study in 2019, finalized in 2020. We are starting the second clinical study Q2 in 2020 and will be finalized in Q2 2021. And then we believe that we have enough data that we can partner or exit already in 21. This is our pipeline, and with the red rings here shows the extended strategy where we want to put more emphasis on this one, and we'll continue this, of course, that we already announced. We have a capital raise now. As I said, we are raising 28 million Swedish kronor, and we had a pre-subscription where we secured 24.1 of these million already. The price of the shares are 4.1 Swedish kronor, and in addition, those who buy shares, they also get free warrants. And I can explain that a little bit further in the pause afterwards. Subscription period is from June 20th to July 9th. Just a little note on my team. I'm very proud of my team. I think we have covered all the essential competencies needed to bring our drugs forward through phase 2 studies and then find a partner. And this is just if you want to ask questions. We have a Q&A session on our homepage, so you can write a question to me and we put the question and the answer to our Q&A session. The other thing I want to just pinpoint is that you can sign up for news from Scandion Oncology. There's a place where you cross out and on the homepage, and then you will automatically receive news from the company. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Niels, for an interesting presentation. I'm actually going to invite the audience to be able to ask you questions right here, right now, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah. Here we have one.
I wonder, in this first study, do you know the status of each patient as regards this cell pumps, so you know where they stand before they are treated?
Yes. So these pumps that I mentioned, that SCO-101 blocks, we have, when we worked at the university, published quite a lot of papers on these pumps and also methodologies to quantify how many pumps are there in a cancer cell. So yes, the plan is, because we call it predictive biomarkers, the plan is to do this on every patient who are enrolled, have the information on this. And I think this is very, very important. And then we have some other things we also measure. We have another mechanism of action. It's something called a kinase, how cells are communicating inside the cells. And they need to have that high also, we believe, in order to respond. But we'll measure all this when we go along with the study, for sure. Good question.
We have another question in the back.
You have elegantly illustrated the efficacy, at least symbolically. What about the side effects, the negative ones? There must be a myriad of possibilities there.
Yeah, so SCO-101 was tested in 4 different phase 1 studies in healthy volunteers. And there was only one side effect, if you can call it a side effect. I would call it more an effect. An enzyme in the liver called UGT1A1 is inhibited, and this is the enzyme that converts bilirubin so it can be excreted when you get degradation of hemoglobin. No worry in the cancer field, but a worry with the former indication where they wanted to develop it. So I don't expect any side effects. Actually, about 15 years ago, there was another drug under development that also blocks not this pump but another pump. Nice data, but the company went bankruptcy. It was sold to another one, went bankruptcy. We have followed it all down there. No further side effects by combining with chemotherapy, which I think is very nice to know. Yeah.
Any more questions from the audience? So I was wondering, oncologists, they often speak about they have a toolbox with different tools that they can use, and something works, then if it doesn't work, they can use another tool and so on. What will it take to convince oncologists to use this tool?
Yeah, so we have been out talking to oncologists regarding our clinical phase 2 study. We need investigators. And they all say, yes, we would like to participate because too often we have to send the patients home. So it would be fantastic to say we have another drug here and we can combine it and we hope you get a new chance. We also had a meeting with the Danish Lægemiddelverket, and they were like this, said if you can develop this and it works, it's a paradigm shift in cancer treatment. They had 3 oncologists in their board because today this is why cancer patients die. So if we can just take a little bit and reduce the death, it would be fantastic.
And looking at your the new strategy, then going into more indications to, of course, increase the value of the project and so on. What's the potential for even further label extensions, if you say that?
Yeah, so we announced here recently that we got indication that we will have our first patent granted. In that patent, we have many indications. Okay. So we can go, these drugs that SCO-101 works together with are taxanes from the tax tree, being used in at least 10 different cancer diseases. It's irinotecan, being used in at least 5 different cancer diseases. 5-fluorouracil, at least 10 or 15 different cancer diseases. Anti-estrogens being used in breast cancer. So we are not for a specific cancer disease, but we are going with the drugs that it works together with. So it doesn't matter which cancer disease. It appears that it's the same resistant mechanisms in lung cancer, in ovarian cancer, in colorectal cancer, if it's a specific drug. So it goes with the drug and not with the cancer disease.
Okay. And are there limitations as far as other types of cancer, like blood cancers? Or?
Yeah, of course there are. I mean, if you have a cancer type where you don't use these drugs, then we can use it. But then we announced that this SCO-301 targets a totally different type of chemotherapy. So by having 301 in our pipeline, I believe that we now cover about 60% of all treatments.
And finally, looking at the other project that's not within oncology, there's also a huge problem there with the antibiotic resistance. I think I saw in your prospectus that you expect or plan to exit or partner or spin that out in 2020 already. Was that correct?
I can't remember if, I think that's what we wrote, but I would like to do it even before.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not deciding, I have a board, but I would like to do it, actually have done it yesterday, because I think it's so important. So we have to push that program as much as we can, get it out, have it to work. When we are raising money here, we have set aside some money, just a little amount of money, to do some in vivo experiments in mice that get resistant bacteria, and we treat them and so forth. And then we are ready to spin out, or whatever we do.
Sounds exciting. Good luck with everything. I'm sure there are more questions. They can ask them to you afterwards, if you hang around for a while. Thank you very much, Nils.
Thank you.
So our next participant, also in the oncology field, and in a quite interesting position as well. I think we will have a dual presentation here. We have 2 representatives for the company. First out, anyway, is Rhovac CEO Anders Ljungqvist. Welcome, Anders.
Thank you. And thank you for the introduction. My name is Anders Ljungqvist, and I'm the CEO of Rhovac, which is a Swedish biotech company working in the field of oncology, specifically fighting metastasis. We are trying to develop a therapy to avoid the spread of cancer in the body. That's our goal. We are listed on the stock exchange here in Stockholm, the small stock exchange Spotlight. And for this reason, this safe harbor statement. So how do we fight metastasis? We are using immune therapy, and we are using the specific area of T-cell activation within the immune therapy. T-cell activation means that we are using the T-cells in the immune system, and we can program these T-cells to fight specific cancer cells. To program these cells, we need to give the cells a target to search for. And the target that we are providing to these cells are the protein Rhovac. And what is specific and very special with this protein is that it's overexpressed in all cancer cells that has a metastatic potential. So if we can target these cells, we can also avoid the spread of cancer in the body. There is another thing with this Rhovac that is interesting, and that is that it's overexpressed in all cancer cells having a metastatic potential, regardless of which cancer indication it stems from. So there is a possibility, and there is a potential possibility to use this treatment in other cancer indications. All cancer indications that metastasize are theoretically a possibility. So right now, we have performed and completed our first clinical trial. I'll shortly come back to that. And we are now aiming at the next clinical phase. And for that, we are raising about 180 million Swedish kroner. And we have decided to go into this field, ourselves. And the basis for that is, among other things, that we have completed a scientific advice with EMA in Europe and also pre-IND meeting with FDA in USA. And both authorities conclude that we have the documentation needed to go into a phase 2b study. We don't need any additional documentation. They also comment that we have the right patient population, and we have the right inclusion criteria, and we have the correct endpoints to study and show the effect of this drug. So in doing this, having this possibility, we will then be able to start our clinical trial. And actually, we have already submitted the clinical trial application in the first country, which is Denmark. And we recently received approval to start the clinical trial in Denmark. And we are now rolling it out in additional at least 5 countries in Europe. So we hope to start the study, having the first patient in here in the beginning of second half of 2019. And from the time that we have the first patient in until the completion of this study, meaning that we can conclude on the efficacy, it will take 24 months. So in Q3 2021, we will have the results of this phase 2b clinical study. In parallel with this, we are also planning to perform a combination study in a different indication, in a solid cancer. And this will be a combination with a drug that is currently on the market. Final decision, final design of that study is not yet complete, but we hope to be able to start the study, this explorative study, sometime in 2020. In parallel with these activities that are planned to take all in all 3 years, and we have, with the funding that we are getting now, we are covered for the whole 3-year period. We are having a research collaboration here in Sweden with Lund University on cancer stem cells, and also with the University in Tübingen and Center for Cancer Immune Therapy in Copenhagen. And these collaborations will continue. So as mentioned, we have completed the first study. And this is obviously a safety and tolerability study. We had 22 patients in. They are treated with 11 subcutaneous injections, so it's a relatively simple way to treat the patients. And the treatment takes approximately 30 weeks. The conclusion is that the safety of this treatment is very safe. We had no grade 3, 4, or 5 toxicity during the study. The tolerability with the patients was also very good compliance, and all 22 patients that were enrolled in the study completed the study, and all 22 patients also completed the follow-up period that have just been finalized. The only thing that the patient experienced was a mild grade 2 reactions in the skin, and that's actually an indication that the adjuvant that we are using for this is working. An adjuvant is there to activate the immune system. It creates an inflammation in the skin, and that's what they can see. So what we showed in the first study is that our treatment is very safe and is well tolerated by the patients that were enrolled in this study. In addition to this, we also measured the immune response, because that's, do we actually activate these T cells that we are talking about? And of the 21 patients that we could evaluate for this, one patient, unfortunately, we had to exclude from this evaluation. Of the 21 patients, 18 of the patients do respond significantly. And we can also see that we follow up for 3 months and 6 months. And here, again, all 18 patients responded significantly. Actually, at the 6-month time period, there was one more patient responding. We don't yet regarding as what we call a confirmed responder, because to classify that this, it has to has 2 measurements where they do respond. So we still say that is 86%, but actually there's one more patient responding at 6 months after completion of treatment. A very good result, and we can conclude here that we can get a product-mediated immune response established in the patient, which means that the drug and the dose we are giving is biologically active. The next study that we actually have now started on, as I mentioned, approval from the Danish authorities. Here we are measuring the effect, and we are measuring the effect based on measurement of PSA doubling time. PSA is the approved and accepted bioindicator in this patient having prostate cancer. So we are enrolling up to 175 patients, and we are measuring the PSA. And as mentioned, from the first patient in to the first two results, that's 24 months. Then we will have the results of this study. It's a relatively big study, and that's because we want to ensure that the results can be calculated as statistically significant. So we can conclude on the efficacy in this study. And as mentioned, the primary objective is to measure, can we, with this treatment, reduce the PSA progression in the treated group compared to the placebo group. And in addition, what we're also doing is measuring, is there a difference in time from where the patients need a second-line treatment? That is normally hormone treatment, compared to the placebo group. And this one is as an objective that has been proposed by FDA in the US as a relevant objective. So these are the activities that we will work with for the next 3 years, and we have, as mentioned, already started, and we are looking very much forward to do this, and we find that our basis for progressing into this phase is very promising. So with this, I will leave the word to Anders, who will tell a little bit more about the business development part.
Right, hello everybody. My name is Anders Månsson, and I'm recently recruited to Rhovac as the Chief Business Officer and Deputy CEO. And that's a very long, fancy title to signify that it is my job to secure that we have a successful exit down the road. The experience I have that makes it relevant that I take this job is substantial in terms of the pharmaceutical industry experience that I have. Most recently, I had a job as the VP and Global Head of Business Development at Leo Pharma, which is a relatively large multinational company. And in that capacity, I've actually been able to secure several multi-billion Swedish krona deals for Leo. I've also worked for Ferring Pharmaceuticals. I worked as Head of Global Strategy and also as a local General Manager, which means that I have substantial experience also in sales and marketing and also in the relevant area in prostate cancer, which is also a focus area for Ferring. Most recently, though, I have had a number of board positions in South Swedish biotech companies, and also jumped in as a CEO of one of those companies and took that from basically the startup level to first external financing. So I have some experience in working in small companies as well. So what makes me interested in Rhovac? I think it is a uniquely attractive concept. I think it is a very innovative concept, not to aim for a specific cancer type, but to aim for metastases per se. And the reason for that is, well, very few primary tumours actually kill the patient, but metastases do frequently. So from a need perspective, that's a very relevant idea to have. And also, I think metastases in the early phases, it's not like treating solid tumours, which has shown to be quite troublesome for immune therapy in the past. And the reason for that is that solid tumours are very difficult for the immune system cells to penetrate, and many solid tumours have the ability to limit the efficacy of immune therapy. And that is very evident from results today. But metastases in the early phases are isolated cells or isolated small group of cells that cannot be immune to immune system treatment, because they are penetrable to the immune system cells, and they do not have the tricks of the trade that solid tumours have in trying to avoid the immune system, becoming what is called immune excluded tumours or even immune desert tumours. I also think it is highly relevant to go for prostate cancer as the first indication to go into in depth. And the reason for that is that the niche that we're trying to get at, which is adjuvant treatment after the initial treatment of the primary tumour, is something that is prevalent in many other cancers. If you look at breast cancer, for example, colorectal cancer, there are treatments that are being administered after the primary tumour has been addressed, either through surgery or radiation. So you're actually able to take some medication to prevent the recurrence of cancer. This is not the case in prostate cancer. Prostate cancer, the next level of treatment, as Anders alluded to, is hormonal treatment, which perhaps doesn't sound so bad, but you can also describe it as castration therapy, because what you're essentially doing is that you're removing the testosterone from the circulation, or blocking it at the receptor level, which obviously gives the patients the perception of being a castrated person, and all the side effects that comes with that in terms of erectile dysfunction and other side effects. So there is no treatment today which is suitable in terms of the side effect profile for treating a patient that has had his primary tumour addressed and is now only seeking to prevent the recurrence of cancer. So who are possible partners for us to seek an exit deal with? Well, first and foremost, it's all the big pharma companies, because essentially all the big pharma companies today deal with oncology. But we should not forget that there is also some mid-sized companies out there who specialize in either urology or oncology. My preference would, however, be for a really big pharma company who would be able to take this project and put it through multiple phase 3 projects. That is to say, to develop this project for a variety of cancer indications. So the goals of business development, well, I've divided this into a strategic goal and some tactical goals. So the strategic goal is to have at least an array of interested companies ready to do final negotiation by the time that we have phase 2B results. But there could be some tactical goals that can help and aid in doing that. And one goal could be that we make an option deal, so that a big pharma comes in and pays a relatively moderate upfront payment in order to be able to execute the deal once phase 2 results are in at predetermined conditions, or only for having first rights of refusal. Another tactical goal could be to make a collaboration agreement with one of the big companies and trying to have a trial where we have our drug, RV001, used in parallel with one of their drugs. That, of course, requires that these drugs could work together in synergy. I should mention also that we have a rights issue ongoing. The subscription period is June 5 to June 19, so that's next week. The subscription ratio is 1:1, so it's a rather large one. Subscription price, 19 krona, and the gross issue size is 181 million krona. And the good thing about this is that this will This is a very good way for a biotech to finance itself, I must say, from a business perspective, because we will be fully funded for 3 years, which should suffice all the way to an exit and give us some negotiation room. So we will not be running out of money at the time the phase 2 results are in when we're negotiating with big pharma companies. So in summary, I conclude that Rhovac has a unique and well-tolerated non-cancer type specific drug candidate in RV001. The first indication that we go into in depth will be adjuvant treatment of prostate cancer, which is good because there is no such treatment available today due to the side effect of later stage treatments. And after the ongoing rights issue, the company will be fully funded for 3 years, which should suffice us all the way to an exit. So I am certainly looking forward to the discussions with Big Pharma. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anders. So now I'm back with the first Anders to take some questions. And I'm going to start by addressing the audience. Are there any questions in the audience for Anders? Yes?
Yeah, I want to ask Anders Månsson. I noticed your passion and your enthusiasm for the Rhovac company and the development of Rhovac. And consequently, I want to ask you, are you a shareholder of Rhovac, and how many in that case?
I'm not currently, but I will be. So I will participate in this. And yeah, I don't know if it's relevant to mention the number, but it's between 500,000 and 1 million.
Okay, thank you.
So in case that didn't show on the camera, since Anders is sitting down, the question was, is Anders Månsson a shareholder in Rhovac? And if so, if not, then will he be? And the answer is yes, in short. We have another question in the back.
How do you assess the competitive landscape, and perhaps specifically also what it will cost on average to bring an oncology candidate to the market? I've seen figures as high as $2 billion on average. Thank you.
When we need to look at the market as such, we stand here, you can say, with the challenge that there is no current treatment. So what we are doing is moving into an area where patients don't get any treatment today. And an advantage obviously is that there is no competitors, but we have to define the market. And it is a big market. It's a very, very, very big market. 40% approximately of the patients are that receive primary treatment do get metastasis and are not treated today, but have to wait for secondary treatment. And we are talking about several 100,000 patients per year in this area. So it is a very, very big market. I think you then asked about the price of development or pricing?
Competition, and also what it will cost on the average to bring a candidate all the way to
the market.
Marketability.
Yeah. The competition is, as mentioned, not really there currently. There is one product that is being developed, but that is in an earlier stage than ours. And it's a little bit difficult to see whether it will progress its development or not. It has not finished the phase 1 clinical trial yet. The cost of developing a product like this is very difficult to say, because it's very much related to what you include in the cost. It's very much related to how you calculate the cost. And you will see billion-dollar development from the big pharma companies. I think we in a biotech company, and that is the strength of a biotech company, can develop the products much cheaper as we are much more focused. We don't have to work on different areas at the same time. It's difficult to give a precise figure. You can say that up to now, we have invested 67 million Swedish, and we're adding then 180 million Swedish, and we are bringing the product up to a stage where it can run directly into a phase 3 clinical trial. That is obviously more expensive. But compared to some of the very big products in the market, it's a low-cost development. And I think one reason for that is what is called a cancer vaccine. All taken into account, that is cheaper to develop than some of the other checkpoint inhibitors and even chemotherapy.
I'd like to add in to the point that Anders Månsson was making earlier, that if your strategy is to partner or exit, and if a big pharma then goes in and wants to explore multiple indications, then of course the cost is also can be, well, there's no limit there.
Oh,
so
that's right.
But on one of other slides also, there was the tactical goals that you can include in business development, and one of them being then to perhaps enter a collaboration with another partner for a combination study. And you did mention in your presentation that that's in the books, so to speak, in the plan. Is there anything you can say about that? What class of drug you were looking at?
Obviously, when we are talking about a combination study in this area, it's logical to think about a checkpoint inhibitors, and there are some on the markets right now. And I think that a combination study with a checkpoint inhibitor could be very interesting, but that is then requiring that we get a deal with a company that can assist us or cooperate in that development. As the checkpoint inhibitors today are very, very expensive, so a company of our size will not be able to pay for that study medication. There could be others, even going back to some of the chemotherapies that are currently used, that could be a good rationale for a combination. It has been documented in some scientific papers that actually the overexpression of Rhovac that is seen in metastasis is reducing the effect of chemotherapy. So that alone gives an opening for a combination study where you could expect to see a synergistic effect with a combination. But right now we are looking at the different possibilities, and we have not made up our mind which way forward we are going. But obviously a checkpoint inhibitor is high on the list of possibilities, yes.
One would argue then that to find a partner, if you have an asset that has the, well, seemingly broad potential that your candidate has, that should be possible then to find the partner you're looking for. Wish you good luck with that. I was wondering though, you also show on the slide that you have shown good results in the follow-up at 3 months and 6 months. You're around 84%, I think.
86%.
86%, sorry. And for the 9-month and the 12-month follow-up, what do you need to show there in order to be able to call it a success?
Well, already you can say that it is a success, because with the 3 months and 6 months follow-up, we show that we have, first of all, a very significant immune response, and it's very robust. It stays. And getting the memory cells of the immune system to ensure that the body can maintain this immune response against for up to 6 months already. That's very, very good. Obviously, if we can show that it's maintained up to 9 months and perhaps even up to 12 months, will increase, but the success of the immune response have already been reached. And what we hope to see, or maybe seeing, that is a further positive results that can help us how we will dose the product in the going forward. That's the main part.
So a continued level around 86% would be considered an icing on the cake.
That would, yeah, you can say so, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, looking at you have a share issue going on, and you have had an interesting number of investors coming in at this point, quite big. Do you want to comment on that?
Yes, obviously when we started this fundraising, we needed to get the total sum in, because it's a 2-year study and it's a 3-year period we are working with. So we need to get the money in to make sure that we complete the study. We don't start any study if we don't know that we have the money to complete it also. So it would have to be a big sum of money. So that is the first thing that is important here. The other thing is that we have attracted some very big investors, institutional investors, and some very big Swedish investors, and they have a more long goal investment in the company. So I think we will see a possibility that we will be able to stabilize the future of the company. We will not need to go out and use enormous resources on finding additional funding, but we can focus on developing the actual project, and that I find to be a very good thing. I'm sure that the biggest investors, the two biggest investors, have guaranteed, I think it's 133 million of this investment. They will stay in the company. They will not start selling out, and that gives us a very, very good position going forward.
That sounds very good. And as Anders also mentioned earlier, is that crucial to have cash on hand when you start negotiations.
Precisely. Yeah.
Okay, wish you good luck with everything, and thank you very much, both of you, for an interesting presentation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So that actually concludes today's program, and we are now going to take a summer break with BioStock Live events. So we'll see you back in August, by the end of August. Thank you very much for watching.